Giovanni, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
I'm happy to have you. This is the first podcast that we're starting without a cheers of wine glasses, but it's also the earliest podcast I've ever shot. I'm excited to have you here and participating in the masterclass, leading the masterclass really on Roero as a region. I first had your wine maybe 10 or 12 years ago through a friend, Michael Humphrey, who was selling the wines at the time.
Michael.
And the wines really kind of occupied a space in my mind. And the label was classic, but not like over the top. And I think that it's maybe exactly the same label. So when I first saw the wines again, I was like, I know these wines. I know them very well. So I'm excited to have you. I'd love for you to tell us your story and kind of tell us your background. Obviously, you're related to Matteo Correggia winery. And so, was that growing up, was the winery always there? You were always kind of part of it?
Yeah, I literally grew up upstairs the winery. So I remember when I was a kid that looking out the window, I was during the harvest time. I look at these guys working like till very late, and they always had a smile on their face. So that was probably the sparkle that pushed me to do winemaking school when I grew up. So honestly, if I had to think something not wine, I wouldn't have an answer. I'm not sure at all, but I'm very happy that I followed winemaking passion. Even in my studies, I went in Alba, where there's this 6 years long winemaking school from 14 to 20. So you start very early. The school has cellar and some vineyards as well. So we did a lot of practice as well beside the books, which is kind of important.
Did you say that was from when you were 14?
Yes, you start when you're 14.
Jesus,
yes. It's
okay.
like a high school kind
That's
of
awesome.
thing. Yes, then if you want, you can go deeper at a university class, but I only did the high school thing, so I finished when I was 20. That was back in 2012. Mm-hmm. And instead of going to university, I preferred to do some experience around. So I went in Australia. I spent a few months there in 2014 in Barossa Valley region. I work in a winery, and that was a very life-changing thing. I learned a lot of things, but even it was a good way to wake up, because I was there alone. So I had to rent a car, buy a car actually, rent a house and work. So it was more a matter of a life experience than a really winemaking experience.
Sure.
For some reason, I started back in 2012 doing at the winery mainly cellar work. Mm-hmm. Then I moved to the vineyards, and then around 2016, I started to travel a little bit more as well. And since then, I managed the winery because my dad passed away a long time ago. And my mom took over the winery in 2001. So she was very strong and brave to carry on the winery for those years while my sister and I were kids. And since 2015-16, I run the winery. Mm-hmm. My mom is still in the picture, doing a lot of visits and tasting, a lot of bureaucracy. Thanks God, I'm not a big fan of that. But yeah, so today I spend most of the time in traveling, selling, and winemaking.
Great. And so you're the primary winemaker as well.
There's another guy actually who's always at the winery 24/7 almost. He had the chance to work with my dad for almost a year back in 2000. He was very young back then. He's just 45 now, so still very young, and we're still working with him. So that a big relief for me, because I can afford to take 2 weeks trip, even sometimes in very busy time of the year, because his name is Luca. He's always there at the winery. So
that's great.
That's big.
There's got to be something comforting about somebody that knows the wines and knows the winery that well, right? That they've been there
exactly.
for that long.
The winery and the vineyards has its own pockets, so it's a huge benefit. I'm pretty happy we work with this guy.
And so the fruit that you guys are working with is all estate fruit?
Yes.
Okay.
It's all estate fruit because it's all organic certified. We tried back in the years to buy from time to time some fruit, but it's almost impossible to find good organic certified fruit or wine. So a few years ago, I was like, just stop it, because you never know what quality of grape you're gonna get. So now it's all estate farm. That's why our production in terms of quantity goes up and down a lot. It just depends on Mother Nature.
Sorry. Let me mute this. And so is that it's specifically hard to purchase fruit maybe that's organically certified in Roero, right?
Yes.
Because
I mean everywhere, man.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
Piedmont, there's some wineries working organically, but less and less. You know, vintages are getting crazy. We have a lot of humidity in Piedmont.
Yeah.
Humidity is a big problem for mildew. We can use copper, the natural product copper, but we have some limit per year, actually every 4 years. That makes a bit more difficult in tricky vintages. So you really have to be precise. We use an external consultant for the agronomical part, just to have one more extra idea about when to spray, because you want to be in the within the limits. Otherwise, you will lose the certification. So it's definitely more expensive. You need to pay more attention during the high season, which is like May and June mainly. You don't look at dates, you don't look about Sunday, Saturday. If it's time to spray, you just spray. But it's possible to do it. So we've been organic since 2014, and it's been a while. But unfortunately, some wineries are like stepping back because we had a bunch of difficult vintages in a row, and they just didn't feel comfortable to carry on with the organic certification.
And the mildew issue is due to the obviously like the fog that is inherent to Piemonte. Is it better or worse in Langhe or Roero? I mean,
I think Roero is a bit worse because our elevation is not as high as Langa. So if you're high up in elevation, usually there's more wind. The wind really helps to dry out the humidity, but it's still a big problem in both regions. It's not a matter just of the fog, because we definitely have a lot of fog, but it's more towards the end of the harvest, or sometime when the harvest is over already. It's just even summertime, sometimes it's so humid. There's a very high humidity in the air, and high temperature as well, because it's summertime, so the mildew grows pretty strong.
So to touch back into the history, it was 2001 when your mom kind of stepped up to run the winery. How long had the winery been there?
So the official vintage was 1985.
85.
So what happened back then, my dad was the game changer of Roero region, the first person who really understood the potential of the Roero sands that we have. And he was able to switch from quantity over quality to quality over quantity. And I always say that because quantity has always been very important in Roero, because Roero region was very poor back then. And so everyone needed to produce as much as possible to feed everyone, to sell, and try to make it a living. He was the first one who understood the potential of the land, so he had to change way of working, first in the vineyards and then in the cellar, introducing new techniques such as green harvest, bunch thinning, introducing new oak barrels and stuff like that. So again, since the 80s, the quality of Roero went up a lot, and it was part of the Barolo Boys as well. Barolo Boys was this group of producers between the 80s and the 90s. They did big revolution in winemaking, right? Since it's Barolo, my dad was the only outsider of this group, but it was definitely influenced by them in terms of vinification and in terms of grapes. That's why I think today we're the only winery more focused on red over white in terms of quantities. And that's very unusual if you think that we are a winery from Roero region.
I mean, that's one of the things that I thought was the most fascinating, right? Is because outside of Arnaz, you don't really get a lot of... Well, we here in the United States, or at least in California, I won't speak for the East Coast, we don't really get a lot of other wines outside of Arnaz.
Yeah, that's a very important point. It's kind of a technicality. So the thing is... Roero is located on the left side of a river called Tanaro. Langhe is on the other side. So despite we're very close, some people tend to put together Roero and Langhe, but they are very different areas. Langhe is on the right, Roero is on the left. For some stupid bureaucracy, we can legally produce Langhe Nebbiolo in the Roero region. So most of my colleagues produces Langhe Nebbiolo because it's easier to sell. You have Langhe and Nebbiolo on the region, so it makes a lot of confusion. People drink Langhe Nebbiolo and they think it's from Langhe. We are one of the few wineries that were super stubborn. We never made Langhe Nebbiolo. We always release our wine under Roero production, under Roero Appellation. And I think that's the only way to bring the Roero Appellation around the world. So at the end of the day, out of I would say 7-8 million bottles of Nebbiolo produced in Roero. Less than 500,000 is Roero DOCG.
Wow.
And we make about 70,000 bottles out of those. So, of course, I agree with you. You don't really see much red wine beside just the white varietal Arnese, which is very popular now in California, but it's the same all over the world because of this.
And so in a way, you kind of have to be stubborn to even get to market in the first place. Right?
Takes forever, man. I'm conscious that with Langhe Nebbiolo, if I switch from Roero DOCG to Langhe Nebbiolo, I would have a lot of benefit. First of all, higher production per hectare, because Roero is 8,000 kilos per hectare, and Langhe Nebbiolo would be 10,000.
Wow.
Roero needs to age minimum 2 years for the classic one. Langhe Nebbiolo doesn't really have timing. You can do just stainless steel if you want. So sometimes it sucks. Like now we sold out the Roero 2023 like a month ago, and until the 1st of July, I cannot release a new vintage.
Sure.
It sucks because I'm losing sales, right? And then the marketing part. Of course, Roero requires always more explanation about what it is, where we are. We never get sick of that. Like, I've been traveling a lot in the past 10 years, and it's totally fine explaining one more time what is Roero. What I wish is that my colleagues would start to make more and more Roero, because at some point you need to reach a certain amount of quantities in terms of bottles in order to make people familiar with it, because you would see more of Roero around, and that would help the appellation, it would help the sales of everybody. So one of our mission is definitely push our colleague to make more Roero, because that's the key.
Would there be some sort of a consortia or something over there that you'd have to assemble effectively, and then?
There is a consortium. There is a consortium of Roero DOCG that gets all the appellation of Roero. But, you know, it's legal to make Langhe Nebbiolo.
Sure.
So what I proposed was to add the word Nebbiolo. So we have Roero Arnese and we have just Roero for the Nebbiolo. Why? If we could put Roero Nebbiolo on the label, that would help a lot.
Sure.
And probably more producers will switch from Langhe Nebbiolo to Roero Nebbiolo, and we will all grow all together. But it didn't have much success, probably because everyone is conscious that they still have the Langhe Nebbiolo there on the side appellation to use. So they were like, no, it looks like stepping back. Look at Burgundy. Burgundy is just Burgundy, you know?
Sure.
But it's probably unfair to compare Roeros and Burgundy. Burgundy has centuries of history. Roero has 40 years, you know? Anyway.
Well, and then additionally, you know, within that, I've been seeing a lot of Alta Langa producers put Chiavanesca / Nebbiolo, or Chiavanesca and then Nebbiolo in parenthesis or something like that. And that makes it sound a little less intimidating for maybe the general consumer. I mean, even for a wine aficionado, until I started selling a Alta Langa producer, I didn't know what the fuck Chiavanesca was, right? Like, there was no reason for me to. And then come to find out it's Nebbiolo. You know?
It helps.
A rose by any other name is just as sweet, right? Additionally, outside of Nebbiolo, you're also making a wine. You're probably making many wines, but one of the other wines that I was exposed to that I'm a huge fan of is the still Brachetto.
Yes.
The only other Brachettos that I've ever had is Brachetto d'Acqui from Rosa Regale, or, you know, there's a couple other great producers that I'm thinking of in my head that are maybe a little bit smaller than Rosa Regale. Is that common over there, and am I unfamiliar with it just because, again, it's something that's incredibly difficult to import in the U.S. or to get maybe a foothold with?
It's
or
not
are you
common
guys kind of trailblazing? That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, it's not common at all. So it's a very unicorn wine because, as you know, we are 4 wineries producing dry Brachetto. And the 4 of us have a very different styles as well, so everyone has his own space. Production is very small. So back in the years, dry Brachetto was very common because there was no technologies yet to produce a sparkling and sweet wine as usually the Brachetto is produced. But no one, except for my granddad actually, was drinking the Brachetto 100% itself. They were usually using that Brachetto to make a blend. The blend was usually with Nebbiolo, that gives you some structure with tannins. Barbera gives you acidity and color. And then some Brachetto because of the aromatics of this grape. You could drink the final blend sooner because they were usually starting to sell and drink the red wine blend already in February that follows the harvest, so very soon. My granddad, for some reason, was already making a 100% dry Brachetto. We just kept on the same legacy. At the beginning, it was a little bit difficult. My dad loved the wine, but he wasn't really sure how to propose this wine to restaurant, to the customer. But fortunately, an important chef in Piedmont back then discovered the Brachetto as the perfect wine for artichokes, which is such a difficult food to find something to drink with, right? And
especially in the world of red wines.
Especially in the world of red wines, yes. And it was always pairing this wine with artichokes. Actually, was always pouring the wine by the glass. That really helped boost a little bit the media knowledge and the marketing part of this wine. Then we start to ship this wine in the US, and the US turns out to be the best market for this wine. And the reason is probably because you can play with the temperature. It could be served as a rosé. It could be served warmer. You just look outside, how's the weather. You look what you have in your dish, and you make a choice. These aromatics are pretty crazy. There's a lot of flowers and roses. It almost seems sweet. Then you taste it, and it's bone dry. And at the end of the day, that's a wine that food pairing, it goes literally with anything light. Seafood, fish, and spicy stuff as well. We sell some of it in Japan as well, mainly for the food pairing part. So it's very easy at this point.
Yeah, I mean, aromatically, when I smelled it for the first time, it smelled like Rosarale, right? It was so giving, and it was so kind of like plummy, and like it smelled like it would be juicy, right? And then when I tasted it and it was bone dry, I was like, wow, this is super compelling wine. Which is hard to accomplish again in the world of red wines, and especially hard to pair with artichokes. So you're making 100% still Bracchettos, you're making 100% Roero Nebbiolos, or just Roero Red. Unfortunately, not being able to call it Roero Nebbiolo yet. I have faith. And then obviously there's Arnaz. You posted a video recently, and in the video you were talking about the ageability of Arnaz. And so I wanted to see if you could elaborate on that here. I feel like the more and more I see a lot of other smaller Italian regions that were making white wine that for the longest time was just consumed immediately because it was a cheap, fresh white wine. There seems to be much more intention and much more seriousness. Thinking of like Verdicchio, I'm thinking of like some Fianos. Like I'm thinking of mostly southern whites in my brain right now. Soave is another great one, maybe from the north, where we're seeing much more intention into this. How are you going about it? Or is it just the fact that you're just now starting to champion it? And has Arnaz always been an ageable wine?
So Arnaz has always been an ageable wine. Of course, today we have more knowledge and more technology as well, especially when we get to temperature control vat. It's something so important today because we pick the Arnaz always very early in August. It's still so hot, so we need to chill it down as soon as possible. So it's getting better now. The thing is, yes, the 1st of January, we get emails and phone calls from all over the world asking about when the new vintage of Arnaz will be released. And if you think about that, 3 months before, it was still on the plane. It was still grape, you know. So in January, past January, the 2024 was way better than 2025. It's always the same. That's something that we always try to help people change this mindset. That's why in 2012 we released the first wine Arnaz Riserva from a super old vines. The vineyards is 75 years old, lots of sand. The name is called La Val dei Preti, and the current release today is the 2019. Why is that? Because we want to make this concept extreme, so produce a very old Arnaz on the paper, on the label, but still very fresh, of course. So no one wants you to wait so many years to drink Arnaz, even because most of them wouldn't be so fresh. That's a specific site, an amazing amphitheater right behind the winery. But it's helping people to understand that sometimes if you wait a few extra months, the quality will be way better. And I always say that as a thing that I know goes against my financials, because if I can sell the new vintage sooner, I make money sooner.
Sure.
But still, on a quality point of view, in the medium long term, it will be a big change. So instead of release the wine in January, we always try to release it around April. It's very tough because there's a lot of markets, a lot of customers. They just wait for the new vintage, so they stay out of Arnaz in their wine list or in their shop, waiting for the new vintage. Sometimes you just losing sales, you know. And if you have like a big stock of the previous Arnaz of previous vintage of Arnaz in your cellar, what you're gonna do. So it's still very challenging, but it's helping for sure. Then the consortium a few years ago created for the first time a Riserva, mentioned a Riserva on the Roero Naze, which is just delaying the release like 1 year later than
like
normal.
bottle aging.
Bottle aging.
Okay.
You could do stainless steel aging, barrel, whatever, but it's not specific, but at least there's more and more 1 year older Arnaise on the market than before, so that is going, I think, in the right direction.
Sure.
But it's still a long battle. I'm faithful, but definitely the Roero Arnaise La Val di Preti 2019, again as the current vintage, is helping a lot.
And the production method, is it significantly different? Is it the old vine material that's giving it
Yes.
the texture? Is there lees aging? Is there batonnage? Like, are you treating it completely differently, or is it mostly just vineyard site?
It's mostly just vineyards. So what we do in both the classic Arnaise, that is a 2025, and the Riserva 2019, is we pick the grape in 2 different times. So the first one is usually in August, because it's quite important to keep as much acidity as possible, because Arnaise is a grape that doesn't have a lot of acidity. So the little we have, I want to keep it all. Second part is picked in September, and we do some skin contact to get some more structure out of the final blend. The percentage that we pick first or second, it depends on the temperature. When it's very hot, most of it is picked in August, and the later part in September. When it's colder, it's right the opposite. And that happens on both of these wines. Then the classic Arnaise stays in stainless steel on the lees for 4 or 5 months, and then we bottle it. This one, the Riserva, stays for 8-9 months in a bottle, in the stainless steel on the lees, and then we bottle it, and we keep the bottle at the winery for 5-6 years before the release. So the 2019 current vintage was bottled back in June 2020, and we released it in 2025 in the fall, right? So it's definitely the vineyard speaking, and then the agibility in the bottle. We use a screw cap that seals down the bottle a lot, so the oxidation happens, of course, but it's way slower and goes probably more towards some minerality flavors. And the wine, after so many years, still very fresh with a very long life ahead as well. So we're always very excited to show this wine to people.
Yeah, I think all of these things are a really great way of like kind of creating a little bit more seriousness, or helping the consumer, the general public, understand qualitatively the region a little bit more, right? Because again, when I think about Arnaise, I've seen Roero Arnaise and I've seen Langhe Arnaise, and I'm just like, Arnaise, right? And I know it's not exactly the same, but if I go to a restaurant and I see a glass of Arnaise, it's what I'm going for, right? But knowing also too that there's significantly more depth to Arnaise than kind of what I've initially thought. I'm thinking of there's a wine that I used to sell at my previous company, Chambers and Chambers, and it was Enrico Serafino, and he was
Canale
making
Village.
and he was making a Ripe de something. It was like a small single site higher end Arnaise that was also really delicious, and it was like, let's say retail price of $50 to $60, which puts it in a very challenging position. But if you got it into a restaurant and it was championed, right, like most of these things, I think that it would have a lot more legs to stand on. But
Absolutely.
That was my first time really tasting a wine from the region that I was like, oh shit, there's serious white wines, So let's go back. You were mentioning Grandpa earlier, and Grandpa's love, or maybe intention, maybe it was a love-hate, who knows, of making 100% still Bracchettos. So when the winery was founded in 1985, Dad and Grandpa were involved.
No, really. 1985, unfortunately, my granddad passed away. So my dad, he inherited the company, even though back then it was very small. There wasn't much land. So he bought step by step the vineyards we have today. But he was just, himself with a sister and with his mom, my grandmother. But he was in charge. Just, created his own brand, his name. He met up with an artist from Uruguay, a painter who moved in Italy a long time ago. Together, he put some idea together, and they created the logo that we've been having forever, which is these 2 hills in the sun that we made modern from time to time. We put more color, especially at the bottom of the labels. Today there's like a little portion of a big painting by the same artist. So today every single wine has a painting connected to. So we like color. As you said before, they are classic but more modern, more towards the modern style. And so in 1985 he started. In 1987 he made for the first time Barbera Superiore Maroon and Roero Riserva La Val di Preti, which are important wines for us today. Those are the first 2 single vineyards he produced. Roque d'Amsay joined a bit later in 1996.
So there's 3 single vineyard reds.
Yes.
Right, because then the white is effectively single vineyard as well.
Yeah.
And then we would be remiss to not talk about the sands. So sand plays a major role in the region. You were describing earlier the 2 hills on the label. Talk to us a little bit more about kind of how sand is a gift or how it's challenging, or maybe a little bit of both, when it comes to the farming practices in the region.
It's definitely a gift because we have our own identity. So we grew up in Nebbiolo and Barbera, just as Langhes. Langhes has a different soil, more towards clay. So after a while you taste wine from Roero, you're able to recognize them. So since we have our own identity, I say sand is definitely a benefit, something good. With global warming, could be challenging, because if it doesn't rain, the water drains down very fast. So we suffers a lot the warm and dry vintages. But on the other side, we're very lucky because I think from Roero now you get a lot of modern wine, and with modern I mean what usually the consumer wants to taste today. So this huge finesse and elegance, long aftertaste. So you have the chance to enjoy some Riservas and Nebbiolo, a big wine, but with just some pasta, or you don't need that huge meal to drink super jammy and tannic wines, right? So I think now is what usually people, especially younger drinkers, want. So I'm pretty happy that we have this style. The sand we have is very small, looks almost like baby powder in summertime. It's crazy. We have a lot of seashells and fossils. Years ago they found not far from our place a huge skeleton of a whale.
Wow.
Because the sand is essentially the seabed. So imagine a million of years ago in Piedmont there was this big ocean, and Roero was one of the last area to merge from the ocean. That was between 3-4 million years ago, which is yesterday in geology. So we're growing up vines on the seabed, while Barolo and Barbaresco, they always been higher elevation, so they emerged from 10 to 30 million years ago. So the sand is partially gone. So that explains why we're so close, 20-30 minutes driving, but the soil is completely different, and so the style, and so even the needs we have during the season, right? Sometimes journalists and critics speak about Roero and Langhe as a whole place, but it's so wrong, because let's go back to 2014, a very rainy vintage. A lot of press wasn't really happy about it, so they didn't talk well about the vintage. It was definitely challenging, but us, we have the sand that drains down faster. We have no hailstorm thoroughly that year, so I like 2014 a lot, and that's why I always try to have at least one bottle, one wine of 2014 in the wines available for tasting at the winery, just to help people understand the potential of that vintage. That I get it that in some places of Barolo they had hailstorms, and then the soil is a bit different, more clayish, so it might have been very challenging, but for us it was a whole different world. So it's important to divide and be very focused on the region you're talking about and not put all together.
Sure, I mean, it's similar to like Alto Piemonte and things like that, with Gattinara, and
it's a whole different world.
It's completely different.
Yes.
I mean, we see that a lot, I think, here domestically, at least on the consumer level, and critics as well. The 2020 vintage, right? The 2020 vintage is panned because there was fires, but there's a lot of wines that were already off the vine. There's a lot of producers that weren't affected, but for some reason, nobody wants to touch 2020 with a stick. And, some larger producers still made wine because you got to make wine, got to pay the bills. And, knowingly it had smoke taint. But, I think in a way it's kind of one of those, like, I don't know, the lesser of two evils. If you know that the wine is... It might have smoke taint, it might not, but equally so in this new world of natural wine or minimal intervention wines, sometimes you buy a wine and you don't know if it's going to have mouse or not, or Brett or not, and you just kind of go like, well, that's the beauty of the wine.
Yes.
Which fire isn't always like lovely, but yeah, I think
sometimes
that
it's better than Brett.
Yeah, exactly.
Personally,
yeah, but like the lumping in of the regions is obviously incredibly problematic. I mean, it's like it's the same reason you don't say that Tuscany and Tuscany and Barolo are the same. Right?
Yes,
They're
absolutely.
not. They're completely different. Right?
You need to break it down.
Yeah.
Really look into details, because sometimes the spot is so close, there's huge differences.
Well, and I think anybody that lives in San Francisco, most of our listeners are San Franciscan Bay Area kind of people. If you're in the west side of the town, it's foggy or windy, and then if you're on the east side of town, it's sunny and hot, and it's completely different. And we're just a 7x7 mile block,
Sure.
and there's tons of different microclimates involved in that area. So yeah, it's fascinating to hear that they were kind of lumping in Roero and Langhe as kind of the same, especially people that are supposed to be the ones that are the most educated. And then earlier you had mentioned, sorry to jump around all of the time, but that's how my brain works.
I love it. My brain works the same when it works.
Yeah, when it works. Yeah, it's a couple more cups of coffee, and I'll be in better shape. Earlier you'd mentioned your father kind of being one of the Barolo Boys and adopting the style of winemaking. When I first had your wine 10 or 11 years ago, it didn't strike me as a huge, massive style of wine. And when I had your wine recently, within the last year, it also didn't strike me as that way. Has there been a departure from, say, when I think, and maybe you can elaborate on this a little bit more in a tangent of sorts, when I think Barolo Boys, I think Brique versus Bouteille. I mean, that's the first thing that comes to mind. And that's really kind of like on the heels of Bordeaux and the success of Bordeaux with scores with large amounts of new oak, or large amounts of oak, because the international consumer was attracted to that. Is that what your father adopted from it, with smaller oak format? And is that still something that's in practice today?
Yeah. I definitely introduced a lot of new barrels. Back then, wines had to be jammy, oaky. Some famous journalists from here wanted that kind of wine. And it was totally fine.
With the initials of RP.
Yes. How did you know that? No, I'm kidding. I'm happy that happened. First of all, Barolo Boys started to do like a little fight between Barolo Boys and traditional guys, right? And today, honestly, I don't care, small oak, big oak, as long as the wine is good, who cares? But I'm very happy that that fight happened back then, because for a decade, all the spotlights of the media, especially US media, were on Piedmont.
Sure.
And I think today, Piedmontese wine wouldn't be so well known in the US market, which is a super important market for Piemonte, especially for Barolo, if that fight didn't happen. So first of all, I'm very glad. Then yes, we all use a lot of new barriques, but since from time to time we started to travel more and more and more, we probably saw what was happening outside, and we understood that you don't want to be stuck in the past. You need to be dynamic, and you need to change when it's time to change. So we definitely changed the style of the winemaking a lot in the years. It was always step by step, because we didn't want to make a sudden big change. Otherwise, the usual drinker of, let's say, Roero Reserva Roque would be worried, like, what's happening here? So different than previous vintage. So it has always been a very slow change, but in 15 years the change was completed. I mean, we're still changing from time to time, but we got what we were looking for. In 2010, we stopped to buy new barriques. So what we do now, we have some big barrels, and we still have a lot of barriques, but we buy them after first passage. So we have some contact in Burgundy that usually after one passage they are done. There's a broker in between that gets this barrel, wash them, sterilize them, so they're totally safe from a bacteria's point of view, and we just use them again. And this choice back in 2010, I realized that it's not that just a choice of style. I mean, we definitely like the wine better this way, but it's even a choice that we have to do because of the climate changing.
Right.
So today, with these warmer vintages, sandy soil, the tannins of Nebbiolo are definitely there, but they're usually a bit more smooth than before. So new oak would be overwhelming, would be just too much on the wines we make today. So again, it's a choice that we did both for style, because we like it better this way, but even because we had to adapt of what's happening outside.
Yeah, I think that brings up a really interesting point, is just kind of like, you know, climate change is something that we're focused on a lot more recently, but it has been something that has been affecting us. And I think about it, and I immediately am thinking about like the Germans and the Austrians that are moving away from the Smaragd classifications because everywhere is getting ripe now, or that are moving away from, you know, the ripeness classifications. And I think what you said is really important, and it's change when it's time to change. I think that is something that we are struggling with a lot right now in Napa, and I won't speak for anybody in particular, but right, like there's a lot of concern about the inability to grow Cabernet, but maybe it's just time to do Cabernet with a little less oak, right? Or like we're not needing to stack on the tannin, or pick earlier, or
Absolutely.
or whatever. There's a lot of other ways to go about it besides just kind of the formulaic, Parkerized style of winemaking, right? So I think that's great. Do you feel like the ability to change like that is easier for, obviously, you know, the Barolo Boys and kind of the separation that happened there, the infighting that happened, and the revolution of wine that happened in Piemonte at the time, because now I won't just say Langhe, because now I know you guys were part of it. Was obviously a major role, but earlier you mentioned that Roero only has 40 plus years of winemaking experience.
On the quality, like there's always been wine there.
Okay.
On quality
Right.
speaking, yes, 40 years from the 80s.
And because you're a relatively young, qualitative producing region, is it easier for you to change, or has it been easier for kind of your neighbors and stuff to change? Are they changing at all?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay,
I
okay.
think it's easier for everybody. And again, we travel a lot, and the traveling part is always very interesting, because besides selling wine, because that's the whole point about it. But you go home and you truly understand what people in that specific market are looking for, what's their taste. So it's, if you have a good communication between who travels and who makes the wine, it's a jackpot. You know, you're able to give direction and keep maybe lower alcohol when it's possible, and more on the elegant side over power, especially that's what's happening today, and that's very, very useful. So it's definitely easier even for Langa's producer, but I think from all the Italians producers make a change like this and try to not be stuck in the past.
And the global travel is so important to that, because you're getting to interact with the consumers and interact with the trade and understand, like, you're getting probably significantly more feedback versus if you had just one importer and you never traveled, you would only be getting what they gave you. And this way you're able to kind of like forage a little bit more kind of information, market resource maybe.
Absolutely. It's always so fun, because you go in a place and for some reason you understand after a week being around talking to people that, for example, they prefer Nebbiolo over Barbera.
Sure.
So you know, once you go home, just push Nebbiolo. Barbera is not their taste. We'll sell it somewhere else. We're the opposite, you know. Right. So that's very useful.
Yeah. Another wine that I'm really excited to taste later today is your sparkling wine, your Alta Langa sparkling. Is that, or what do you classify it as? It's Langhe sparkling? No.
Alta Langa.
Alta Langa sparkling. Okay.
Exactly.
Right.
Alta Langa is an appellation that is growing a lot in the past few years. The total sales of 2025 was a bit over 2 million bottles, so it's super small as well, but it's growing a lot in the years. And today, if you go in Piemonte and you ask for aperitivo, 9 times out of 10 is Alta Langa. So of course we're very strong there. We're trying to get out from Piemonte and get out from Italy. A fair amount of bottles have been sent in the US as well, so it's definitely growing. Alta Langa is an amazing appellation, because Alta stands for high elevation. The vineyards we have are 650 meters above the sea level, so that would probably be like 1,500 feet. So very, very high. There's no problem with the acidity, and we are able, because we're so high up in the elevation, to leave the grapes a bit longer on the vines, because the acidity is always very high, and so we can get more complexity because the ripeness season is a bit longer. Consider we always pick usually Arnaise first and then the bubbles, which is crazy. Usually the bubble is always the first thing that you pick. We have white and rosé, very tiny production, about 2,500 bottles, no cases each.
Right.
So it's
200 cases basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's pretty fun, you know. We introduced finally in an official way a bubble in our lineup, because we were making a bubble before, but it was mainly for us, for Christmas, for weddings of friends. We never released it on the market because, despite it was, quality speaking, a good bubble, I'm biased, but I liked it a lot. We didn't have the vineyards in the Alta Langa region, so it was just a sparkling wine. Sparkling wine has no appellation, specific appellation, or rules about aging, about varietals that you can use. So from a marketing point of view, I didn't want to start specific label for that wine.
Right.
So as soon as we could put our hands on the Alta Langa, we released it straight away. Alta Langa is probably the most restrictive appellation in the whole world for bubbles, because it's minimum 30 months on the lease.
I see.
Champagne should be 18, Franciacorta 24, so it's very specific. There's these high elevation things that plays a very important roles. We can only use either Chardonnay and Pinot Noir.
Okay, got it. So it's only 2 varieties permitted.
Only 2 varietals, and we call these wines, both the white and the rosé, Severina, which is the name of my grandmother from my dad's side, because even the previous bubble was already called Severina, so we kind of wanted to dedicate a wine to her in an official way, because now you can see around the world some bottles of Severina Alta Langa bubbles.
Sure. What's something else that you wish people knew about Roero?
So Roero is such an amazing place, because since the land is not so expensive as Barolo yet, we'll see. Yeah. It's still very affordable. There's a lot of biodiversity. So in a philosophy like ours, where the organic plays a very important role, having more biodiversity, it's great, because we have a lot of woods, we have a lot of forest, there's a lot of peaches as well, especially Canale, which is the village I come from, still today very famous for a particular breed of peaches. Strawberries, hazelnuts, a bunch of stuff. So a lot of animals as well. And when you grow up vines in a very biodiverse area, it's definitely easier to get that way, you know. At the end of the day, it's very important for us, when you go in the vineyards and you make a hole in the dirt and you see life, you see stuff moving, it means you're going towards the right direction. So Roero can definitely give you that, even from a vacation point of view. There's a lot of good restaurants, there's a lot of wineries, of course, a lot of path for bike or hiking in the Rocche region, which is this part of the central part of Roero that looks like a canyon. It's so fun if you like to do sports. So Roero has a lot to offer, and then it's very close to Langhe region as well, because if you come in Piedmont, for sure you want to go there as well. And you're very close to Torino as well. Turin is such a beautiful city. It's like 1 hour from Canale, from where the winery is located, and it's very convenient to just drive up 1 hour north and visit Torino.
It's great. And then I want to spend just a little bit of time talking about the friend that introduced me to it. So Mike Humphrey was my first sales rep when I was first buying wine, which I was like 19 years old. And he was always a great advocate, mentor of mine. And again, having the wines in the Texas market 10 years ago, have you seen a significant shift? Were you in the market? You said 2016, 10 years ago. Have you seen a significant shift in the Texas market, the international market across the U.S., or are there kind of pockets that have always been like strong?
There's definitely an evolution. There's people are more open to taste wines, especially new appellation. Sometimes they're eager to find new appellation. What I noticed that most of the time, which is kind of crazy, we make more work in underdogs market, because I think there people are not used to have the winemaker to visit very, very often.
Sure.
So when you do tasting, when you do market visit, people are so happy to see you, are very happy to join wine dinner or masterclass that you do. And that explains why, if you look of the flights where I go, most of them are like places where most of people from US will be, why are you going there? But we do a good job, you know.
Yeah.
So I'm always happy to go in smaller markets. Of course, big markets are important. There's high competition, but there's still a lot of space, I think. But people are definitely more curious, especially on the trade side, almost eager to find the new appellation. And for some, Roero is still a new appellation, just to, you know, to brag and say, I just found this, I brought this. You know, you don't probably know much about it,
For
but
sure.
thanks to me, you know, you'll have the chance to taste it, and I can tell you a couple of words about this wine. So we're in a very good time of our history, I think, as a Roero region now.
Yeah, I think the secondary market is a great point, right? Like when I go out of town and I go to, like, you know, maybe a smaller town, I look around and I see a lot of the wine lists, and a lot of the wine lists are the same. Yep. You know, it's all Constellation, Gallo, you know, it's all just kind of like bigger brands. And then, you know, there's like a few places that are really championing like smaller producers. And it's great to see. I mean, Tahoe has tons of amazing places where they're really focused on like smaller regions, smaller producers. But you kind of have to seek those places out. If you just went to the same old hotels or the same old chain restaurants, it would be the same wines. Absolutely. You know what I mean? So and they know their clientele better to know like what is an easy parallel. Like, oh, you like that? Try this. This is Roero, and it's kind of the gateway wine, if you will, of the relationship. What's another way that you've found success, or that you think maybe importers or salespeople have found success selling Roero wines, aside from the fact that, you know, it is maybe a lesser famous region? Quality
price and style. So all our wines, let's talk about the classic Roero we make, right? Classic Roero means minimum 2 years as a total aging, minimum 6 months of that 2 years has to be in oak. So most of the time Roero are even cheaper than Langhe Nebbiolo from either Roero, especially Langa actually, but usually they're better because some of the Langhe Nebbiolo are released too young. They're just stainless steel, so making Nebbiolo just with stainless steel is definitely possible, but it's not that easy. So at the end of the day, you get something cheaper, but better. So of course, it requires some extra explanation about, again, what Roero is, what's the grape, where we are located. But once people understand that, you start to move a lot of wine. So our best sell as a red wine is definitely our classic Roero, which is still in by the glass price range. And the style is super modern. I always say that wine is perfect wine for everybody, for either wine lovers or beginners. Because if you never had a lot of Nebbiolo before and you start with a big Riserva, it would be too much, you know. You would feel your teeth fall down, too much tannins. While our classic Nebbiolo has definitely tannins, but they're so smooth and silky, and even beginners are happy about it. They're always surprised, like, this is the first time I like Nebbiolo. I hear that a lot. And then you start to move some cases around. So that's one of the biggest benefit of Roero today.
Yeah, I think that's well said. You know, so in a way, the restrictions on aging and the restrictions on what you can do is almost a good thing, in the sense that the longer time that it needs to age is offering a wine that's immediately maybe more pleasant to the consumer, versus like some Langhe Nebbiolos are fine, but some are super fruity and like kind of jammy, and then some are great after a few years, you know. And again, unfortunately for the American consumer and a lot of the global market these days, we're not here to buy and store wine. We're here to buy and drink wine. You know what I mean? So,
and then at the end of the day, it's still Nebbiolo. Nebbiolo, you need to be patient.
Right. Yeah. Well, we're getting to the point, kind of towards the end of the podcast. I usually would reveal a blind wine right now, but I wanted to see: is there any advice or any statements that you want to make or offer to any of the listeners or viewers? I forget, we do YouTube also.
Absolutely. So again, understand that Roero is Nebbiolo from a beautiful area, more on the approachable and elegant side. And especially when you travel to Italy, come visit us. We do a lot of visits and tasting because it's the best thing to, you know, place a face and an idea, philosophy behind a glass of wine. So it's something that we're building more and more, and not just us, the whole region. There's a beautiful place for it, again, hiking. So it's definitely a place that you should put in your stops if you visit Italy. And again, please help us to push the Roero. It's such an amazing wine. It's Nebbiolo, and you're going to like it.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. I love it. Okay.